Okay.
Okay, welcome to the 8/24/2002 meeting of the Milford Planning and Zoning Board's Regulation Subcommittee. Before we call the roll, I would just like to inform the public this is not a public hearing. They're not permitted to speak, but they are welcome to listen. And Meg, if you would call the roll for the record.
Mr. Collegian.
I'm present.
Mr. Sadi.
Present.
And Chairman Quish.
I am here. Also, we see David, Stephen, and Meg representing the city. The first order of business is to review what the state, the purpose of this portion of the meeting is to consider changes to our present regulations for accessory dwelling units. So I think what the impetus of this was that there was a state statute that was put forth, and Milford Planning and Zoning opted out by a unanimous vote. It was our full intention to bring it in front of this committee to look at our present reg, compare it to what the state was trying to do, which I think was valuable, and my personal hope, and I believe the hope of the committee, is that we find a way to achieve some of the goals that the state reg had without harming Milford. David, if you would then please try to present some kind of an overview that does a comparison of what the state was trying to do and what our present regs are, and you can do it in any way you want.
Okay. So first, do you see our existing reg, which it now has is turned into a draft to perhaps make some changes? Do you see that?
I do.
Okay, good. Okay. Well, basically, what the state was looking to do was to force municipalities to have accessory apartments because many municipalities, most in the state, don't actually allow them. Milford was fortunate that we already had regulations. Our regulations, though, were and still are more on the restricted side. The state statutes, unless a municipality opted out, would have allowed for an accessory apartment in any single family home that in the state of Connecticut. If you just adopted the state statute, it would allow the apartment to be either in the main dwelling or in an accessory dwelling. The city could, or any town that had opted to keep the state statute, could come up with regulations after the fact, which would be after January of next year or before if you wanted to keep it anyway, and you could dictate some setbacks for the accessory structures. You could also have a rule that would prohibit the use of the accessory unit being used for a Airbnb. But it was, you could create the accessory unit, you could rent it out. You didn't have to worry about parking, and that was in a nutshell what the state regulation was. We got a lot of feedback during the public hearing about what people didn't like about our accessory apartment regulations. So after that, Bob Sadi and staff started, Bob mostly, putting together a first sort of blush at how could we tweak our current regulations, and that's actually what's here. So one of the big things that we heard in the public hearing is people want to be able to rent the accessory apartment out. They don't want to be limited to a family member. So as a draft, that language right here has been removed. So this does specify that the dwelling would still remain in the principal dwelling. and that they, you know, it would be one unit. It wouldn't be something that would be outside of the main dwelling that's there. So unlike the state statute, this wouldn't allow you to convert your garage, for instance, or your shed into an accessory apartment. And again, this is just a draft. Obviously, whatever the committee and board want to do, you know, they can do and change. We have a laundry list of things in our regulations, and we're going to go down this laundry list that, you know, is looking to tweak. So right now, you can't have your own doorway. So this is telling us that, you know, you won't have an exterior door facing the street. So again, it creates a little more breathing room for an interior, accessory apartment. Right now, our regulations say that if you live on a non-conforming lot, you have a single-family home in a non-conforming lot, you can't even apply for the accessory apartment because you're in a non-conforming situation. This gets rid of that language. So you're just a single-family house, it's a primary dwelling, you can have an accessory apartment. The primary dwelling shall be owned and occupied during the entire duration of the permit. Okay. And that is language that we have now because, well, you know, if you're going to have an accessory apartment, it's supposed to be accessory to the dwelling that's there. You don't want the owner not to be there, and you're just renting it out as a two-family house.
Did the state statute address that point or not?
I believe that it did. I can, you know, after we go through this, I can go and pull out.
Yeah. If you just like write yourself a note that we want that data at one point.
Yeah, because the statute again was to allow an accessory apartment to the dwelling that was there. I don't think its intent was to create two-family houses and have the owner be elsewhere, but we'll double check that. Owner occupation state. Okay, so making it very simple, the proposed accessory dwelling unit be 800 feet as measured from the exterior walls. And all habitable space be counted towards the 800 square feet. There'll be some debate. You know, this is the current language that we have right now, and there's reasons why we had this language here, but it'll be up for discussion.
And just as a note, the state statute said that you could have, I believe, 30% of the size of the primary dwelling unit, or 1,000 square feet, whichever is less.
Right.
Okay.
Right. That is true. So we're just calling out a number. That's correct. Let's see here. The accessory apartment shall utilize existing dwellings, driveway, utilities, then mailbox. So, and gas and electric. And so right now our language says separate utilities include but not limited to heating systems, electric, water, and gas are prohibited. This is just saying it another way that you're using the utilities that are there.
So am I correct in saying that the strike was done by staff and the question was done by Mr. Sadi?
No, that's the opposite. I'm the red, the purple is staff. Any
Okay.
of the red marks were mine.
Gotcha. Thank you.
We're doing a better job of defining what the kitchen facilities are and what the hookups are, because that's what the presence of a stove is what triggers an accessory apartment. If you have cooking facilities, you have a stove. That's the difference between an accessory apartment and a wet bar. So that's why that language is there.
And that is specific to our current regs, not the state.
Correct. Yeah, they don't go into. They just say, you can have an accessory apartment. This is how we define accessory apartment, and there you go. We struck out no accessory apartment should be utilized for income purposes. So, right now, no one should be charging rent. And if the intent is to create the ability to have accessory apartments, and you want to, charge a family member or, whoever else you're going to allow into your home to be in the accessory apartment, you could charge them rent. Down here, the accessory apartment permit reissue the applicant 2 months prior. This is the administrative stuff of, when it would expire, and again, just cleaning up the line.
Yeah, I mean, I think that this is it's difficult to do. Yeah, it's just there's so many points that could be discussed.
Sure.
And I guess.
Can I interrupt for a second?
Yeah,
why are we dwelling on what the state says? We opted out of the state. We have some good regs, and we can tweak those regs. Why are we dwelling on what the states wanted to tell us, and we decided not to listen? Let's just forget about that. Let's concentrate on what we have. It's 2 pages. Why are we making this harder than it is? We have a statute. It's 2 pages long, and we can tweak it. Why do we have to worry about something that we opted not to pay attention to?
I don't think we're dwelling on it, Brian. I think
you're dwelling on it.
Well, I'm bringing up a few points, and I wouldn't call it dwelling, but you can call it whatever you want. I think that the fact that the state legislature did something, that they were trying to do something that was a benefit to most of the people in the state. That's
your opinion, Jim. That's not a fact. That's your opinion.
Exactly.
And we decided that was not going to be our opinion, and it's certainly not my opinion or the board's. So let's move on.
Well, I think that I think that I disagree a little bit. I think that we opted not to be constricted by the language, but I don't think that it was a statement from the whole board that what they were trying to do wasn't valuable and we should listen to some of it. That's all.
Well, if I could just put my 2 cents in.
For
me, it boils down to 3 things. And I think we've addressed it too. The who and that the family aspect and blood relatives and all that, we struck that out, and I think that was a good idea. The money, and it's unenforceable anyway. The money part of it, whether you can rent it or if it's just for in-laws, we struck that out, and I think that's good too, because that's unenforceable also. And it seems to be that if part of the reason we want to consider this is because Milford's too expensive to live, and we want to rent part of our property to increase our ability to pay our mortgage, all right, that's fine. So the money is there. So it leaves us with, are we going to have this an attached, or is it going to be an accessory building? And for me, if it's attached, I'm happy and we can go home. And that will take care of a lot of other things too, because you're going to be more judicious about who you let live under your roof than you're going to let in your backyard. I don't think everybody needs to have a house in their backyard.
And then just as the rest of the regulations sort of move on, it's just cleaning up of administrative things.
Yeah, one thing that I think is that we would miss if we just jumped too quickly was that a permit is expired. I think that it's not, I don't think that has value. I think that if you have an accessory apartment, it's not a permit, it doesn't expire, it just, it's by right.
Sure.
And I personally think that an apartment over a detached garage or a depending on what size lot you have, if you have, the new concept of a tiny home seems to be popular, and it seems to be a way that mitigates some expense of in terms of living in a particular community or area, that it would be valuable to allow accessory structures to be dwelling units. Yeah, we can pick up the pace here and not go to every line item if you want, Brian, that's fine. And you're welcome to, whatever. We can disagree on a lot of stuff and we can agree on a lot of stuff. So
guys, I apologize for coming in late. I thought it was a 6:30 meeting, so I'm just catching up.
So John, this is the regulation subcommittee, not the POCD.
Oh, Jesus.
So you're early.
I'm early.
Okay.
It's been that kind of day. Okay, so can I be in the audience or should I get out of
You,
here?
you can be in the audience. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, it's
Awesome.
we're still below the threshold.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. So we can Jim, we can rewrite number 10, and yeah, and then if you have an accessory apartment, you have an accessory apartment, and not have an expiration on it. If that's what the committee wants, that's fine. And if the committee wants to discuss the pros and cons of having an accessory unit that's not in the main unit, you can. I mean, it's your regulation. So really,
yep. Okay. So if you want to just like briefly run through the rest, and we can go. And you do have some data on how many properties this could potentially affect.
Oh, sure.
And then we look at setbacks. I think there was, and again, I apologize for bringing up the state regs. There was something that you could not make it more restrictive than for setbacks than the house. So if you're in a zone where you have a 10-foot setback for your main structure, you still have a 10-foot setback for your accessory dwelling unit. And I don't know that I think that would limit significantly accessory detached units in like R5s, R75s, even R10s maybe.
Yeah. So in the state statute, that was an option that the municipality could do that if they wanted to. They didn't have to.
Okay. Thank you for correcting me. Yeah. So that is something that we could do here as well.
Sure.
That was somewhat. I mean, I think that the people that are opposed to this are concerned that it's going to be 15,000 new tiny homes in Milford, and I think that might change the fabric and the culture, and I think that that's a legitimate consideration for sure. But if you want to run through this quickly, we can look at some data.
So we pretty much, I mean, we already did the meat and potatoes. The rest is just administrative stuff. So and which, depending on if we remove this, it's going to affect some of this other stuff being removed. So if the property is to be sold, the permit issued for it would expire. The kitchen facilities would have to be removed. Again, something to think about if you want to grant a property the accessory structure. Once it's there, then we would get rid of this because it wouldn't expire.
Understood. I mean, my instinct is that it would run with the land. It's not a personal thing because it's not a family member anymore. Some of that language was probably inserted to protect against something that we don't necessarily feel we want to protect against right now.
Right. And the same for 14, if it was, anything that was previously approved and is non-conforming by today's standards, well, they would disappear when the dwelling is sold. Obviously, you would be getting rid of that. Non-conforming is non-conforming. Again, more language for upon the expiration. We'd be looking to certify that it's been discontinued. Well, depending on what you want to do with the regulation. Again, if it's something that runs with the land, you've granted it, then we wouldn't need this.
I think one consideration with the 800 square feet is that that's a maximum, whereas if you had a 1,500 square foot house, you could only have a 500 square foot. I mean, that was just what was proposed. I don't know I don't necessarily have a feeling either way of.
Well, that would be if you were going with the sliding scale that that was in the state statute. We've got 800 square feet. And it was felt.
So that's a maximum.
That's the maximum. So
we have a minimum.
We do not have a minimum. No.
Okay.
No.
We do have a minimum in other multifamily language throughout. But
we have minimums for dwelling size, for apartment sizes, we have that, which I believe we're going to have to sort of revisit that, because in the statute, not necessarily the one for the portion of the statute for this, but I have to double check. There was, they had removed having minimums. You know, basically zoning couldn't have minimums for unit sizes. It was basically,
Okay.
it was basically going to be tied to the building code. But I'd have to double check that. So, you know, I think it was felt when Milford created this, you know, rather restrictive accessory apartment thing. So one of the things the board had decided back then as well, you know, if you have a small house, you know, say you have 1,000 square foot house, I mean, you could have, you know, a large accessory unit in there if you wanted to, or something, you know, smaller, however you want to divide it up. And if you had a, you know, a big house, you know, you had 800 feet to work with. That's what they felt. Again, you can, depending on what you want to do with this, you know, you could change that size. You could have a sliding scale. I mean, it's up to you. Yeah.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Yeah. And I think we've reached the end. Yeah, we did.
Okay, you did some research and you have some numbers and some.
Well, we have, and it's what the numbers that we have actually won't, if we're getting rid of, the non-conforming lot information here. If we don't care about the lots being non-conforming, let me pull that up for you. Stephen chatted with our GIS department, who came up with non-conforming building lots. So that's this. Okay, let me make sure I'm sharing it, since I'm famous for sharing things that aren't being shared here. Let's take a look here. Okay. Okay, so and this is also for when we start to talk about non-conforming lots for a different topic. But in the we have the R5 zone. The city identifies 2,856 properties. Of those properties, 1,776 are non-conforming. The key thing here is they're non-conforming in terms of size. There are more that are non-conforming because they don't have either the width or the depth. But the way that the assessor's office tracks properties, which is what's being used as the basis for this, is just the lot size. So right off the bat, you know, more than half of the R5 zone, the properties are non-conforming by today's standards. So now we go up to the R7.5 zone. It's even worse. So the R7.5 zone, you have 3,832 properties in the R7.5. Of those, 2,027 are non-conforming as to size. Again, we're not talking about width, we're not talking about depth, because those figures also could render a lot non-conforming as well. Again, we don't have the data through the city assessor's records. R10, 3,088 R10 properties, 1,583 again are non-conforming. R12.5, we have 3,838 of those, 1,241 are non-conforming. R18, 1,513 that are conforming, 696 are non-conforming. You'll notice now as the land gets larger, the amount of non-conformities actually will start to tap out. R30, 844 properties, 632 non-conforming. RA, our largest zone, 1,146 of those properties, 625 of those are non-conforming.
David, I think that the high proportion of non-conformities in the R1830 and RA may come from cluster subdivisions.
That could be.
That are not readily, we can't grab hold of that data because it's not readily available.
Yeah.
So I suspect a lot of those were simply clustered down.
Yeah. Then the question is, do they conform to what they were clustered down to? You would think by definition they would conform to what they were clustered down to, but if they're going by the original zone, then yeah.
Yeah.
I'd have to check with Marcus. because I thought that the assessor's office tracked things that had been clustered, but I'm not sure.
David, let's just try to stay with the AD.
Oh, sorry.
ADUs. So this is relevant how? Because there's a consideration of not permitting a accessory dwelling unit in a non-conforming.
If the board under the current regulations for accessory apartments, you can't establish an accessory apartment on a property that is currently non-conforming.
Yeah, I think that's
obviously this would give you an idea of how many of those properties would be non-conforming. Obviously, if you remove that language, then these numbers are they're interesting numbers, but it doesn't.
Yeah. No, I mean it's that you're kind of picking winners and losers, but they could be neighbors, and one person can get in and one person can't.
Sure, right, exactly.
Because of some kind of random and de minimis.
Right, and that's
so there was more. You had sent out again. I didn't really have a time to scrutinize it because I just got it a half hour ago. But you had another document that you sent us.
Let me look. Let me see what I sent. Hold on.
The merger language?
There was a different topic. I sent you the draft statement of use.
Okay. Yeah, we don't need that then.
Yeah. And again, the other thing was also for the merger language, also for a different discussion. So we have two other discussions that we could have about regulations if you choose to do that tonight.
So I think that the questions for the subcommittee and then for the board would be detached or it has to be or not, right? We allow detached or not. Second point of contention would be the setbacks. So if you are trying to protect the integrity of a particular neighborhood, you wouldn't want to allow an accessory dwelling unit within a foot of your neighbor's house because that would be in sort of an infringement. So I think that might be a consideration and look maybe for staff to come up with some parameters that are relevant to each of the various zones. And is there any, I know that the Zoning Board of Appeals has some leeway in what they allow because of hardship. Is there a way that we can craft our language to say that there is no condition that can be overridden because of hardship? Because everything is, so much of what we have is non-conforming. And if we set setback requirements for the accessory dwelling units, that can we prohibit a ZBA from overruling us because of the perceived setback?
No, you can't. The ZBA can grant a variance to any regulation.
Okay.
Hardship is defined by state statute, and it's found in the land. There has to be something unique in the land that you don't see in the district as a whole. So the application of the regulations on this particular piece of property are onerous because of some prevailing situation about this property.
Okay, thank you, Stephen.
And keep in mind, Mr. Chair, that often what ZBA does is they are granting things based on wishes, not on actual classic hardship.
That is quite true.
Yeah. And as just for something to think about, if the committee is contemplating allowing these in accessory structures, we do have as sort of a basis to, already in place for setbacks, which is where we do have accessory structure setback regulations that are different, obviously, from the dwelling, and they vary depending on the zone. So, they start at, I believe, 4 feet and 5 feet off the property lines. Then, depending on the zone, they increase in size a little bit. So it's we wouldn't have to be reinventing the wheel if you wanted to have accessory structures be converted, and also, not to go back to the state, but they were contemplating that as, again, gee, if you wanted to convert your garage, you know, you could, and because it's an already existing structure that's there. But again, you can come up with whatever it is you want.
Right. So so out of the detached or not detached setbacks that could be, the easy button would be to just take accessory structures per zone and add the dwelling unit to it and keep those setbacks the same. If you would, yeah, obviously, if you don't go with detached, then that becomes a moot point or whatever.
We have setbacks for detached garages and so forth. Depending on the zone, it's a little bit different.
And then there's the pre-existing
Then there's the
legal
setback.
non-conforming.
Yeah, there's the setback for the house, and then there's a separate setback for the detached garage.
And then there's 1,000 legal non-conforming garages.
Yeah.
You may, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, there's non-conformities everywhere. They're existing.
Any other points of contention that we can foresee?
I think if we want to, I think I'd be amenable to looking at detached. I would look at detached units differently if there were some restrictions using setbacks and maybe total lot coverage. And I also think we need to remember that having your neighbor's shed where he keeps his lawnmower 5 feet from your yard is different than having a house that people live in 5 feet from your yard. But I think you could, I'm against detached, but I think you could limit detached by using setbacks and total lot coverage. Maybe that would be something we could consider.
Well, those standards are already there.
Right.
Yeah. Another thing the board should consider is some kind of a parking standard. Either 0 extra parking spaces or 1 or whatever you guys think is reasonable and doable.
And from an enforcement perspective, Stephen, if the setbacks are clearly laid out and there's a definitive decision on what's legal non-conforming for, say, a garage conversion or I mean, I think a shed conversion would be kind of, you know, you can't, you maybe have language where you can't increase the footprint of an existing accessory building and make it a dwelling unit, but you could repurpose it or you know, make it fit into the rest of the accessory building regulations. It's pretty simple to enforce, or are there loopholes? And with parking, something that's simple to enforce if you added a parking space?
Yeah, a parking space is 9 by 18.
And so it could be on grass, or it has to be.
It has to be on a suitably surfaced. Doesn't have to be paved. Just has to be suitably surfaced and drained.
What's that word?
Suitably surfaced.
Oh, suitably. Okay, thank you.
In other words, you can't park on the grass on the side of the house.
Right.
Unless suitably surfaced and drained.
Yeah. So just to give you background, you know, when someone comes in to build a new house, one of the things that you know, Stephen looks at for the permit is where's the parking, because we require 2 parking spaces for a single family dwelling. So what the board and what this committee would have to think about is, okay, if you have an accessory apartment, or do you want to have an extra space, or do you not want to have an extra space? Again, just something to think about, because that, depending on what's going on, you know, someone might not be able to provide that extra space on their property. So again, just something to think about.
They could have one of those typical 3,500 square foot lots in East Broadway, and parking is already at a premium.
Right. And would you foresee that would be something someone would go to ZBA for relief?
Yeah, probably get it.
Well, and I was going to say that's if you have a standard. So, for instance, if you decide not to require any more parking, then there would be nothing to relieve. If you want to have a space, and then having an extra space, and if they don't have it, yeah, then they would need to get they'd need to get a variance.
Okay. I'm just trying to make sure that we're not, we're leaving a barn door open.
Yeah. Well, I think it's a problem only for the micro lots, the R5 lots. I don't think this is going to be a problem in the R10 and above.
Right.
Because there's enough room. There's at least 10,000 square feet. You can reasonably fit everything in without going over your lot coverage.
Can you tell us what the lot coverage is, say, in each of the zones?
On R5, it's 65% of lot coverage. Building coverage is 45, lot coverage is 65, and it goes incrementally down. I'm trying to remember off the top of my head, and I can't remember off the top of my head, but the larger the lot size, the smaller the percentages get.
Right.
So in the RA, I think the building coverage is 15%, lot coverage is 25%.
Can we just get the chart for that for the next time?
Sure.
I could quickly pull it up if you wanted.
That's fine.
Do you want that?
I'd be interested to see it. Yes.
Hold on. Give me 2 seconds. Let me go over here. Let me pull this up here. Okay. I'm just scrolling through the regs now. Just have to get to the chart. Almost there. I'm in this section. Almost.
The Jeopardy music.
Okay, here we go. Okay, let me go over here.
And then, Stephen, question for you: if you are in R5 and you're legal non-conforming because you really only have 3,800 square feet, you're non-conforming because your lot, your building size is probably going to take up more of a percentage than you're allowed also, right? So there could be two non-conforming.
The smaller the lot, the more difficult it gets.
Yeah.
So a lot of, more than half the R5 lots are non-conforming.
Right.
And probably more than that because a lot of them are very narrow, 30, 35 feet wide. So you can have 6,000 square feet, but only have 35 feet of width and you're not conforming.
Gotcha. Okay, so R5.
Here's R5.
So down at the bottom are the
for the percentages.
Lot coverage percentages.
So, okay.
So
building area as percentage of lot. So that's allowing an accessory structure. I don't get the difference between 45 and 65.
Well, building area is the house, a detached garage if you have it, sheds, any building that covers the lot.
Okay.
Lot coverage is all of those buildings plus hardscape like driveways, attices, terrios, deck projections. So that's why lot coverage is always higher.
Okay, so lot coverage includes flat work, patios.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks. *75. Again, it's so if you had if you were at your 45% of these smaller lots, if you're on an R5 and you're already taking up 45%, which is a 2,000 square foot footprint, then you would be precluded from, if we just follow these regulations as they are and apply them to an accessory dwelling unit that is detached, it would be prohibitive for most less than R10.
Yeah, it would be tough to put a detached accessory on an R5 or 7.5 lot. It gets much easier from R10 up.
Right.
Because most people in the R5 zone are maximizing what they can build anyway.
Right. But they could go up, for example, and then they could have an accessory dwelling unit if they go up, you know, if they're.
Well, yeah, the trend for, you know, last 5-6 years is to max out your building in your R5 zone. Because most of them are either on the beach or very close to the beach.
The smaller lots, the R75s and the R5s.
Yeah. So they build up 3 stories. They build the biggest house they can build with the eye of flipping it. I don't have a dog.
Okay. No, you can hear that. I'm sorry.
I mean, I don't quite know how to proceed. Anyone have any suggestions or?
Just chew on it for a while. It's not an easy nut to crack.
Mr. Quish, can I ask some questions too?
You can do anything you'd like, Mr. Sadi.
Well, no, you're the chair. You have to give me permission. So thank you for permission.
I just did.
One of the documents that we did have, David, was you said there was 137 properties in the city of Milford that have apparently already been either given accessory. Is that one of the documents you gave us?
I don't know that I gave you that document, but I can pull it up. Yeah.
Well, no, you don't need to pull it up. It came. You brought it to us on Monday.
Oh, okay, so it's on Monday
in the package.
Okay.
But just the materials you gave us tonight, I just ran some numbers. 17,117 of the total R5s to RAs. 8580 were non-conforming to 8537. So more than 50% were non-conforming. Those are just some facts. You know, Brian, your thoughts are excellent. When I put this together, I tried to be somewhat mindful of the state statute, but I don't disagree with you. And I have the same concern about whether it's going to be detached or not. So we agree on the first two, the issue of non-family and it being able to be income. That being said, I've got 3 concerns. My first one is this issue that the chairman brought up about permitting. As long as we have some record kept, David, I think that we need to have a record kept if we change our regulations. How many are done? Because over the years, nobody's been keeping records. I think it's important to go forward. So that is that thing. Maybe we want to keep that permit in there, but we could tweak that. This issue of what was originally paragraph 14, I think we should take a further deep dive into because it also involves some other property because there's a substantial amount. I have no numbers. But you get along, as you said, the beach areas and closest to the water, a substantial amount of non-conforming uses. And we've dealt with that in 2 other areas. So I make sure that we're not cutting off one of our hands to help ourselves. And the last thing that I think was mentioned both by the chair and Brian was that if we are considering detached, we should really have some idea of setbacks, which I agree fully. But does that mean that if we apply the setback rule that's in existence that they're not going to be allowed either? So we need some answers if we could on that, please. And I know that there was an email that came out from a Mr. Michael Brown, who I think is watching tonight. He made some inquiry of I thought, is that the assessor's office, David? Mr. Aram?
No, I don't know who that is. No.
He was inquiring about properties in the city. How many would be? That was an earlier.
Oh, hang on. That's our GIS. That's our GIS person.
You passed it on to somebody in the city.
Yeah,
That was a city assessor.
John Hagan is our GIS person, who then goes to the assessor's database because that's where we have all the individual properties in the city and what the particulars are for those properties. Again, in terms of lot area, but not setbacks or lot width.
Right. But I mean, I think that you know, it's been a good it's been a long explanation, but I think it's important because the tough one is going to be, I think, Brian and the chair, is that the issue of whether they're going to be separated or not. And the concern I have that some people have spoken about is that we can just put in extra building lots everywhere, and we don't have the answer to that. We should be giving some facts to us if we can before we make the appropriate decision, send the recommendation on to the full committee. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, for listening to me. Thank you very much, Mr. Selkis, and thank you, Mr. Collegian.
You're welcome. So just to build upon what Bob just talked about, we wouldn't be able to get any data regarding the lot widths or the setbacks. I mean, had we been able to do that, we would be able to have given you a better better numbers for what's non-conforming. Again, because those things are not tracked. You know, we have lots that were created, you know, again, before we had regulations. They're taxed, obviously. We know what the sizes are that they're taxed on, but we don't have, you know, surveys. We don't have anything that will tell us what the setbacks are for what's there, and how many that are in existence are conforming or not conforming. You know, so that would be data we wouldn't be able to get you. So if you're considering a regulation and you want to have a particular set of setbacks for an accessory, you know, dwelling unit, you know, the place to start would be with what we have for the current accessory buildings that we have. And if you want something different, you know, that'll be up to you. But we won't be able to tell you that, you know, gee, there are 1,000 parcels in the city where the setback is, you know, meeting the 4 foot and 5 foot in the R5 zone, and then another subset, you know, is you know, within 3 feet of the line, and another subset is within a foot of the line or 2 feet. We're unable to. We don't have that data. We wouldn't be able to tell you.
Thanks, Dan. But 3117 we're talking about, I don't see anything at all about setbacks.
3117.
That's the accessory use regulation that exists.
Right, and that's correct, because the regulations as they exist don't have accessory dwelling units and accessory structures. All I'm saying is, if you are going down that road and you want to create a or allow accessory structures to be used as accessory buildings, or to have an accessory dwelling unit in an accessory building, you would just need to create some sort of standard. But I wouldn't be able to tell you what all the other accessory buildings are out there in terms of their setbacks, just by what the standards are today. If you want to use those standards, that's all I'm saying.
Well, there is really no clock ticking.
Right.
So I think that, you know, we will, I'd like to consider what I heard today and what I've read today, and think about it, and maybe we'll, you know, come up with some tweaks as we discussed, and revisit it again in a couple of weeks. And you know, I think I don't know if we want to do this. I mean, if we come up with a regulation language that we agree on in this committee to bring forth to the whole board and go through that process, there would be a public hearing on that. I don't know if it's valuable to, and I don't know if we would be permitted to have a public hearing for just a subcommittee and invite the public to give us their ideas prior to finalizing anything we would present to the full board. Would be permitted to do that, David?
You know, you can have people, you can have public participation, but it's not a public hearing.
And how would that structure? Would it have to be individuals invited, or would it be open?
We can advertise it ahead of time on the agenda, as you know, ask, you know, if public wants to give some feedback or share their thoughts, because where it's going to count is when it's before the entire board and you have an actual regulation. Because
right,
you know,
it may be valuable to hear what the public is thinking, or at least those who are willing to participate, before we finalize something to bring to the board.
That's up to you. I mean, I know that at least one of the people who are participating tonight, maybe both, are watching tonight, I think participated in the public hearing for the opt-out. So, and I think a lot of the ideas that are changes that are being proposed so far in the regulations were promulgated by those public comments. So, yeah.
I would like to do that then, if it's okay with the other board members, to have public participation in 2 weeks, and then maybe 2 weeks after that, come up with a final proposal to give to the board and see if they pass it out to the, I mean, they could tweak it too. You know, they're every right to do that.
Yeah, you're supposed to, as a subcommittee, you're supposed to be giving the full board, you know, guidance. You know, you've looked at the issue, and you know, this is a recommendation, and then the full board can go, hey, that's great, or yeah, now we want to change this, or go, you know, go back to the subcommittee and then do something else.
Is that okay with the rest of the committee to go down that road?
Okay with me, Mr. Chair.
That's fine.
Thank you. I appreciate that. We are at 6:57. We have the POCD coming up at 7. So I would hear a motion to adjourn.
Could we make a motion before that to approve the minutes of July 26, 2022 at least?
That's fine by me, without objection. So, okay. And we can.
I have no objection to a motion to adjourn by Mr. Collegian.
I make a motion to adjourn.
Thank
So
you, Brian.
moved.
I'll second that.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
I appreciate everybody's thoughts and their time.
Take care.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.